Good morning, Recruiting Gym Champions. How are you doing? I hope you're well. I'm back. Angela, Alan, Catherine and Angela have been doing a fantastic job in terms of running the show most days. I'm here today because I've got a guest. I've got Guy Rubin, founder of Ebster. Ebster basically helping sales productivity and enablement, managing your pipeline, improving your relationship nurturing. And he's here today to talk to us about building stronger relationships with clients. So hi Guy, how you doing?
I'm very well. Lovely to see you, Alex. It's always good to spend time with people in the recruitment sector. It's a world I grew up in, and if you cut me, I bleed recruitment tech. So it's kind of where I've come from, and I don't get to spend that much time in it these days. But really lovely to spend time with everyone here, and I'm seeing lots of names in the chat as well. So all familiar. So good to see everybody here.
Indeed. And so give us a 20-second overview of what Ebster does, Guy, and how that's going to help you advise us on email cadences and building relationships.
So at Ebster, we've got well over 1,000 companies now using our technology all over the world. About 20% of those are recruitment companies. And in essence, we help companies understand what relationships they have and how much traction they're getting with each of those individual relationships. So we work with all sorts of sales organizations, and we do that by as you can imagine, most businesses don't really know what relationships they've got. Half of them never make it into the system, and the ones that do make it into the system are usually out of date or incomplete. So we help companies by mapping all their relationships. We build every business an internal LinkedIn, and then we build out kind of cadence tools to help them engage with those people at scale.
Right. So recruitment is fantastic at many things, Guy. There's not many groups that are more resilient, but they're not always connected as well as they could be with the outside world. So for many, the term email cadence will be new today. So what is an email cadence?
Okay, well, a cadence can be more than just email, but it's a journey. It's a journey of engagement with individuals. So most experienced recruiters these days are going to would concede that they trade on their relationships. In the industry that we live in, relationships are really our currency. An experienced recruiter is going to have well over 1,000 relationships at any one time with contractors, with candidates, with hiring managers, and actually maintaining those relationships is nearly impossible if you're going to do it manually. And of course, if you're not maintaining your relationship, you can be damn sure that there's a competitor out there that's interested in maintaining it for you. Right. And I mean, to talk about recruitment, we've recently really scaled our business. We've got teams now in California as well as in Australia. And if I look at how we recruited, we used a range of recruitment companies a couple of years ago, and when we had our first initial kind of big growth spurt. And then at the beginning of this year, we started recruiting again aggressively, and we ended up using a different set of recruiters this time round, not because the ones that we were dealing with last time weren't any good. They did a job, but they just didn't maintain a relationship with us.
Right.
And so we ended up engaging with the ones that did, and ended up working with them. So big missed opportunity with the recruiters we were working with before.
Right. And so what types of, so when you talk about email cadence to your clients, what sort of things are they typically keeping in touch with individuals? Is it a newsletter? Is it a personal email? What is it that they're doing?
So a cadence is just a journey of activities to maintain a personal relationship with every individual contact. So that could include, meeting face to face, perhaps not these days. It can include LinkedIn engagement. It can include email, telephone calls. It's just about maintaining a very personal one-to-one relationship with every individual that you're interested in maintaining a relationship with, and having technology in place that you can use to do it at scale. Right. And if you've got 1,000 relationships, well then, and you're working in a recruitment team of 100, well, that's a lot of relationships that you're trying to maintain across the business. And that simple exercise of being front of mind at the point where the person actually is ready to start recruiting means that you're much more likely to get the job in the first place. So it's not necessarily about selling to them all the time, but it's about being front of mind and maintaining a consistent message and professionalism with that particular relationship.
So back in the day, we used to talk about contact cycle. So when I was growing up, it was all about everybody had to be in a 30-day or a 14-day or a 7-day contact cycle.
Yeah.
And obviously back then, the only tool was the telephone. Now like you say, we've got face-to-face, we've got email, we've got social media and all those types of things. But really, that's what we're talking about, is that as an organization, do you have a planned contact cycle to stay in touch with every candidate and every client?
Yeah, and as managers in recruitment businesses, you can actually oversee all of this. So it no longer needs to be an art; it can now be a science, right? So step one, we need to know how many relationships we've got and where they are, and how engaged we are with those individuals. So companies that have been doing this for a long time have moved away from measuring activity and now starting to measure engagement. So that's really the key here. So, but before we get to kind of ninja level, we have to start with the basics. And the basics are all about, relationships are based on consistent touch points, right? So you want an engine in place that's got a list of activities that are going on a consistent basis, where you're reaching out to these individuals with a very personal message. So this isn't necessarily about newsletters. That's your marketing department. Okay, so the marketing department is about raising the brand of the whole business, and getting your mass mails out and telling people about what's going on in your organization or what's going on in your industry. And a lot of the time, that a marketing message isn't necessarily coming from an individual, or certainly not necessarily from the individual that holds the relationship. It's coming from the brand. Okay. So putting the marketing message aside, the individual sales reps have an opportunity to actually maintain, really good engagement with those 1,000 people on an individual one-to-one basis. So these are messages that are going out, from the individual, and very, very personal, referencing the previous relationship, and really trying to add value to the whether it's the contractor, the candidate, or the hiring manager. When
you're trying to reference the personal relationship and you're trying to do that at scale, how do you do that? Because that's where my brain melts, that gap between automation and personalization.
Sure. Well, again, the marketing department can be really helpful here. So they can define templates where 80-90% of the email is actually predefined. And again, the key here is measuring the output. So this is this move from art to science. Okay, so if you're managing a team of 100 recruiters and you've got and each of them have got 1,000 relationships, you can really start to A/B test different subject lines and compare that to open rates. So nobody should be sending out emails these days without tracking whether they're opened or whether.
So how do you do that? Most CRMs they're built to manage a recruitment process. They're not actually built to manage relationships and sales pipelines. So how do you do that?
Well, there's lots of tools out there that fit into this kind of sales enablement space. So those that are following technology trends are seeing that there was a huge investment in kind of marketing technology that came to market between kind of 2014, 2018, right? So you might see that there's a very famous picture of marketing technology businesses have gone from kind of 500 companies doing this kind of stuff through to kind of 5,000, and that shift has now moved to sales technology. So there's a lot of different businesses out there doing sales tech. Some of them are very recruitment specific, but really what we're talking about doesn't need to be. So some of the market leaders, putting us aside, are companies like SalesLoft, Outreach, are good companies that have literally skyrocketed. So there probably isn't a sales organization in the States, at least, that isn't already using some sort of cadence technology independent of their CRM. Okay, so if you're not doing it, then you're possibly missing out. And it's fair to say that recruiters perhaps are not at the forefront of this at the moment. So if you bring this in early, then you've got an opportunity to perhaps beat the competition.
Yeah, because I think a lot of recruiters are still catching up with marketing tech in terms of sort of like tagging users into lists and just regular newsletters. Bear in mind, they're probably bleeding edge at other things like Boolean searching and data mining and that sort of stuff. So it's difficult to be good at everything. I think that when you look at the list of things a 360 recruiter needs to be good at to succeed, it is mind blowing.
But you can't rely on the individual reps to be responsible for this stuff. You've got to put in process. We've got to. For me, it feels like the sales function, in particular in recruitment companies, is the last function that's not managing itself by the numbers. The number of relationships that each individual recruiter has and how well engaged they are should be being measured within every organization. And no relationship should be left behind. At least not consciously. So, if a particular hiring manager is not recruiting for the next 6 months, that shouldn't mean that you're not maintaining a relationship with them. Because guess what? In 6 months' time, they'll have another recruitment spurt, and if you're top of mind, then you're the one that they're going to go to.
Right. Okay. That's That's good to that's good to know. So where do I start? So if I don't have email cadence, but I'm thinking, right, my team needs to be better at managing contact cycles or contact cadence with my teams. Where do they go to start this type of activity? Because we're moving away from KPIs, and this is about being how many relationships do you have active in your network?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's about recognizing that you are never going to you're never going to maintain consistent relationships with them manually. It's just never going to happen. So I was speaking with the sales director of a top 10 recruitment company only last month, and he was explaining to me that they expect that up to half of their relationships this year won't be available to them next year. Okay, and that's insane, right? If you think about the money spent on salaries to effectively employ people to build relationships, those people either move on, or the hiring managers move on, or that for a period of time they're not recruiting, so you don't maintain that relationship, and then a year later those relationships are not available to you. That's insane. That's insane. And then we employ a load of graduates.
That's a figure. 50% churn would be a figure I'd be familiar with. So,
and it's madness. And then we employ a load of graduates to go and build net new relationships, which is crazy, right? Because we've got these companies and these relationships that we've had, that we've spent a huge amount of money on salaries to actually engage with, build a relationship with, and perhaps even get a contract signed with, right? So, maintaining that relationship is a priority. And should be considered in the same level of maintaining a relationship with your contractors that are coming up for renewal. It'd be madness to not reach out to them again on a regular basis, because if you renew them, they make you more money.
I mean, and I think that one of the problems with the industry as a whole is that the aversion to metrics and KPIs, the aversion to making people do things from business owners, has meant that actually it is all just left to the individual rep. And we're actually, if the goal is of the organization, it's the organization's relationship. It's not the recruiter's relationship. And so it's how can the organization support the recruiter in nurturing those relationships, but also the recruiter has a responsibility to maintain those relationships.
Yeah, but when you consider the average recruiter will be juggling candidates, clients, contractors all at the same time, it's just not conceivable to think that there are thousands of relationships that need to be managed. That they're just not going to be able to do it. It's just impossible to keep on top of all of them. And that's why you need a cadence solution. Okay, so something that will create what we call an omnichannel cadence through the individual user. So it's very personal rather than blanket emails. And it can include activities like LinkedIn, calls, and emails. And really, it's just prompting the individual recruiter to kick off the best next action at any one time.
Right. So it's using technology to remind them you've got a contractor that's about to lapse, or you've got candidates that registered in the last 3 months that you haven't spoken to.
Yeah, or this is a hiring manager you haven't spoken to in the last 30 days. Send out email 7. Or make a phone call, and this is the topic you should be discussing, or send out a LinkedIn invite, or perhaps it's time to send them something in the post.
How much time does that take to set up? Because I think the challenge a lot of recruiters is they're so busy, especially business owners, so busy working in the. I mean, I'm thinking of this today. I use an email automation tool where we can score relationships based on engagement and that sort of stuff. Do we track everything we could track? Do we do the engagement score we should? Probably not.
Well, again, it comes down to what you're trying to achieve. If you're happy running a very small recruitment business and have no aspirations to grow, well, then maybe you don't need it. But if you want to scale predictable revenue, well, then you absolutely need to get your teams performing the tasks consistently and maintaining all of those individual relationships. The revenue will come, the business will come if you're top of mind at the point where they're ready to spend money.
And this is where often in our business development course, we talk about marketing-centric approach to business development. So it's not about picking up jobs, it's about staying top of mind. How do you remind people that you're there?
Yeah, and you need to map your market and the workflows that are needed when identify what message to send to who, right? So, different people are going to respond to different messages, but again, that ability to A/B test what's working and what's not, and what gets the best open rates and what gets the best response rates and what works is you're right, a marketing approach to sales.
Yeah, and that's where I guess recruiters often, again, they're in this short-term win where I need a job today, partly because they haven't maintained enough relationships. So the analogy I often use is they only want to talk to people when they need sex, and you don't get regular sex just by walking up to people saying, "Do you want sex right now?" You have to nurture those relationships to make sure they're open to that suggestion when it comes around.
I've been married for 20 years, so I wouldn't know what you're talking about. But
you're telling me even birthdays and Christmases pass you by 20 years, huh?
Afraid so, yeah. So
there we are. Might have something to do with the fact you're still leaving your pants on the bathroom floor.
Well, there you go. I think I think we're going down the wrong journey here. But yes. Look, we help over 300 recruitment companies manage those relationships. And it's one of the hardest challenges. You've got to implement process around this stuff to stay ahead of the curve. And it's fair to say that not everyone's doing it. It's really a lot of recruiters are still very old school. They rely on very expensive resources that claim to have very good relationships. But when we dive into it, you find all sorts of really interesting stats. So we were in a company the other day who was explaining to us, and this recruiter was explaining to me quite enthusiastically about how Barclays was his account. Okay, so and actually, as you dive into it, what he was explaining was that actually he's got one relationship with one hiring manager.
Barclays is my client. Barclays is my client.
There you go, right? And again, the manager might consider that, or needs to understand where his strengths are, and perhaps that hiring manager needs to have that one-on-one relationship with that individual. But all of the rest of Barclays is open to the rest of the team, and the chances are that someone somewhere's got those relationships. So that for graduates coming into the business, they need the ability to lean on existing relationships so that they can make warm phone calls rather than cold calls. Okay, so they need to know what relationships they can lean on, they can take advantage of, and reference the fact that in the past we've worked with you, and I'd like to re-engage. And for existing recruiters, it's a crying shame to lose 50% of your relationships every year, right? All of this time and money and effort is being spent. Let's take advantage of it. Let's lean on those relationships so that we're top of mind when they're ready to spend money again.
And on that note, we could not have a better impassioned plea to the industry to build better relationships and make more of the relationships that they've got. So, Guy, obviously everyone can find you on LinkedIn.
Lovely to see everyone.
Ebster also have a great podcast, which is Sales Ops Demystified.
The world's most popular sales operations podcast. We get thousands of views every week. We get guests from all industries talking about how they're running their sales operations. So sales ops is now becoming a fast growing space. If you're running a sales organization and don't have a full-time sales operations manager, then you might be missing a trick. But come and watch our podcasts. Lots of information there to find out more.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining us, everybody. I'll be back tomorrow with Claire Davis. And don't forget, at 4:15 tomorrow, Cripps and Clark, the best end to the week in recruitment. So I will see you soon. Guy, thank you very much. And goodbye, everybody.
Take care. Thank you, everyone.
See you soon. Bye.